A very good afternoon now. Thank you for spending time with us. And today will be the third and the last of an eventful day. And this panel this topic is very interesting, okay? We talk about intimate conversations we need to have with our children. And we're going to be talking about sex, porn, and virginity. So before we dive into the conversation, so please do send your questions in so that we can answer them as we go along the way. Before you, so do send your questions in, yeah? And I want to start introducing my wonderful lineup of panelists. Let's start with Galvin. Galvin SENG is a senior family educator with Touch Parenting or Touch Community Services, right? So we look forward for you to share all your wisdom and all your techniques, yeah? And then Ju Him is a friend, I think over time, is a friend of mine. She is the project director of Birds and Bees, which I attended and I really enjoyed because there were key themes that you all repeated. And it's not just about the sex education, because I think in Singapore, the truth is we have sex education in school. And it doesn't, while it talks about biologically what happens, the emotional connection is where the huge gap is for a lot of our children, yeah? So project director of Birds and Bees from Aware. And then we have a friend, another friend of mine, we haven't been in contact for many, many years, but Seng Lee, CHUA Seng Lee, who is the CEO and founder.
Chairman.
The chairman. Chairman of Leadership Academy.
Character Leadership Academy.
Character Leadership Academy. So you get what he is about, right? It's entirely his life. I think it's not just at the academy, but it's your life's work in terms of the experience, in terms of leadership and character building is what your purpose has always been about. Yeah. So three very amazing panelists, and with that, let's start with vulnerability. Because I think the truth, right, there is a lot of parents, we don't talk about it because it reflects our own shame or our guilt, or we have been told, don't talk about it. We don't even call our private parts what they are. And that, I think, the lack of language reflects that morass, right, mentally that we have. So Galvin, I want to ask you, right? So this is going to be a very fun session. You know, most parents, when they watch TV, a kissing scene comes on, immediately close eyes, and then the kids have to, so what do you have to, why do you think we do that? And what's the unconscious message we are actually sending?
I think it really depends on the motivation of the parent. Like what you say, it might be the case of even the parent finds that it's shameful. That might be the case. But there's also the case of being age appropriate. Yeah, because even if you don't close children's eyes, right? Young children, when they see mouth to mouth, they go, eee, because some children say, why is this uncle trying to swallow the auntie? So,
what is this uncle trying to swallow the auntie? Okay.
So I think it's if we are to cover the eyes, whether it is kissing or any inappropriate content or violence, right? It should be because of being not age appropriate. It's not so much of being shameful about it. In fact, if what is presented on screen is a show of affection, a peck on the cheek, and things like that, it should be. It could be a learning point for the child to know that this is how people can convey love.
Thank you for sharing. So it's us as parents being that filters for the children because they may not be able to process what their eyes are seeing.
Yeah. And what happens here is especially for younger children, very impressionable. What is seen cannot be unseen.
It plays in their mind, right? Over and
then
over.
Just keeps on playing. And right now, in the internet age, if you're curious about something, you can just go to the internet and just search, and then who knows what's going to come out.
A lot more, right? And later you'll share about your son.
Got his permission.
That's good.
Okay, I love that you actually got his permission. I think that's really
consent.
Okay. By Julie Murray. Okay, Ju, so we all know, right? Like even today when I was sharing with someone, we're going to be talking about intimate conversations we need to have with our children. The father's response was, yeah, but school they teach sex education, right? And sometimes in this outsourced world, we outsource to school and then they do it at primary school, upper primary and secondary. Yet, why is it critical that parents actually have this kind of conversations with their children? What is so different?
Well, I think you got to realize that realistically in a school, it's one size fits all, right? It's a class of 40. By the time they start, it's class of 40. So there's one messaging from one teacher. And I think you kind of alluded to it, sex is one area where there is no middle ground. Very few people can talk about it in a very neutral manner. There's always some moral judgment attached to it. So what if the teacher that happens to be teaching your kids' class and yours is not fully aligned, maybe it's a bit off, whatever, and also because it's very one size fits all, it's just like that, don't do it or whatever. What happened to the nuances? And like you said, what happened to the emotional connection, all these other things is not really talked about. So sex is always talked about in this vacuum, like it's just sexual intercourse. So is kissing part of sex? Is caressing part? None of these gray areas and nuances, right? And also the emotional connection, like, do children know that it's not just the act, it's the whole emotional that goes with it, like having a crush or attraction or whatever, right? So all this is silent. Then how? Then it's like the child goes, don't do it, but I'm feeling all these things. What does it mean, right? And also I think it's also a chance for parents. This is another area for parents to connect with their children, to practice having difficult conversations. You want your child to be able to have difficult conversations in future with their partner, with their intimate partner, whatever, but also as a relationship, right? As a spousal relationship. But if you shy away from it all your child's life, where is your child going to learn? Where's the modeling coming from? Right? So it's just to take a deep breath and allow ourselves to be vulnerable. And before your child cold, right? You've got to prepare, right? Learn how to be vulnerable to yourself, think about it, or with your spouse, whatever. But I think it's really important because these are all modeling that our children will pick up. Yeah.
I so love what you're sharing. And the truth is, our kids have a lot of misconception. Like, I remember many years talking to my kids, they said, oh, I thought you wake up one morning and it's a gift from God. So they take words literally, or I thought a man and woman sleep together. Suddenly the next morning, because you sleep together, you have a child. So from just talking about this with them, I realized that there is so much gaps that we don't know they don't know. Because for us, from our perception, there's so much we fill in. And in having those connections is the ability then to influence them, right? Because if we are going to shy away, I think that's the greatest. We lose that space to speak into their lives, which is what we want to do.
Yes.
So I'm going to give you one, to start, right? A question that, the mindset, right, is a lot of parents are away, uncomfortable. I don't even talk about it with my husband, for example. How do we talk, to our son? So how do we broach it with our children?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is very interesting because yesterday when I was just revising your question, my son was just in front of me. So I told my son, hey, how should Papa answer question like that? Then my son said, very easy lah. Just tell the boy, how do you think you are made? So I think you're right, because many of us have our own fear, our own cowardness. So how do we help parents? I think that's where training, education helps. But when we talk about training, I think you have to be very specific training. I think I'll jump into specific things. I think that's where role playing helps. Where let's say with the three of us, one of us will act as a child, ask, Mommy, how come I make, what happened to between you and Daddy? So that's where I think that's the kind of training. So parents must get used to. You see, this kind of training is serve as a rehearsal. But you can do it with adults. It's easier for you to do it with your child. You already prepare yourself that your child will ask you this kind of question. So I thought, and then the other thing is, of course, so one is training. The other one is, of course, sharing from parents. You hear other parents talk about our own struggle, our own experiences. It becomes a modeling experience for us. So I think a panel like this is actually very good for other parents who are watching us as well. That we are able to be vulnerable for you so that you can pick it up and do it with our children as well.
I love the two things that you talk about, role playing, right? Because the more we rehearse, the more we can practice the difficult questions that we know they will ask, and then now we got time to think. Because on the spot, no time to think, then say already, Salah, cannot, like, it's not like we can pause and rewind, right? So I love that. And the other thing you mentioned is the peer support, right? In just having that community where we are openly discussing this and supporting each other in the different journey throughout. So I think that's wonderful.
I echo what she said.
Sorry, go ahead.
I echo what she said earlier. I think there's no one size fits all. One size fits all approach doesn't fit anybody. And therefore, I like what you say about, I think we must start with this kind of, to me, these are not the most difficult conversation. fact, this is the first kind of growing up conversation we need to start to have with our children. Because if you cannot do this with them now, later in life when they meet more difficult issues, how do you expect them to open up to you?
Yeah.
If you can't even help them at the different age-appropriate topics. So I really encourage all parents who are watching to start the process.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you
No, I was going to say that it's not that you cannot redo, it's that, okay, you can sort of pause and go, actually, no, I don't know what I'm saying, and revisit. Because it's like life, right? It's not that we cannot fail as parents. We will fail as parents. And then when we realize that we did something like, oh my God, I didn't want to do that, right? Then you go back to your child and say, hey, remember the conversation I had earlier? Can we have a redo? I wasn't thinking, I didn't mean what I said. This is actually what I really want you to know, right?
Wonderful. I love that. And it's even not even a redo. That was done.
That was done, yeah.
And Mommy became wiser in the time I had to think things through. And this is how I would, what I want to say to you. And what do you have to say? So it's not just one way, but also to listen from them. So wonderful. And moving on from what you're saying. So Galvin, I want to ask, there are different like milestones, right? Where we then age appropriate content that we then bring up to our children. So what, especially in Asia, right? What are the various age milestones to bring up specific topics? Like when are our children a bit more ready, for different topics? Because no point talking about porn when they are like 2 years old. No, but
Actually,
okay. Share.
Don't plant the thought.
No, actually, if I remember wrongly, I think I started talking to my boy about it when he was 3.
About porn.
But what happens here is we need to know that younger children, they think very concretely. So we are not talking about abstract concepts or but it's more of helping them to identify what porn is, for example. There are certain pictures that you accidentally see that may make you feel uncomfortable, and what do you do? So I think in the preschool, even lower primary stage, is to teach the concrete stuff, to tell them that this is what you should do and things like that, and maybe explain why. But as they grow older, then that's where we start to engage more deeper conversations. As to the values and why do you think this person is doing this?
Wonderful. I love how you are saying, right, that the quality of the conversations are more concrete when they are younger. So correct, compared to the concepts like whether it's love, whether it's jealousy, or what, that or emotions later as we graduate. So it's never too young to start.
Never too young to start, because in this age, they can come across such things anywhere they go.
I love what you share, because it's what I would call a teachable moment. Because something came up, that creates an opportunity for you to then speak into it, instead of to leave that moment gone, right? Where we don't then influence.
I mean, for example, when you're watching TV, you can be sure, at least in Singapore, you don't get such things, right? But there may be scary things coming out, you can shield the eyes. But if you let the child watch some, YouTube videos, and somehow certain things come about, it might be too late to go and shield, right? Then you can use that opportunity to talk about it instead.
And actually, I fully agree with you, because 12 years ago, when I had my first daughter, she was 3 years old, 12 years ago, she was watching Disney Princess. And then you see 2 Disney princesses kiss, right? Ariel and Jasmine, I remember. So you are right. I mean, in today's day and age, because they have access to the screen, they are watching things that if we don't talk them through or process with them, they form their own opinions, and we don't even know they are forming those opinions, right? So wonderful. And Ju, moving on for teachable moments, how do we create teachable moments? How do we help parents identify these are teachable moments? Because maybe for me, I'm so shy, I don't even want to talk about it, rather hide. And then how do I recognize, this could be a moment to influence their lives?
I think, like I said, you need to prepare, like Sing Lee said, role playing and all that, right? So beforehand, maybe identify a few areas that you think are important for whatever age they are, right? So I would say consent at any age, and porn is becoming increasingly a problem even at younger ages. So if you identify some of these issues in your head already, you think through what message you want to give your child. So like, it's like we are all graduated from school already, but we still need to prepare, right? In school, you need to prepare for your lessons. So you talk to your child, you also need to prepare. It's natural. I think sometimes there's this misconception that relationships and parenting comes naturally. There's actually a lot of preparation and work beforehand. So, identify some of these key areas and how you want to talk about it. So, like you said, like movies, nowadays a lot of kids don't even watch, land channels. It's more like Netflix, whatever. So if the parent watches in advance and goes, oh, my kid like this show, let me watch first and see what I can pick out, This is enormous amount of preparation, and I know parents are really busy, but as you become better at it, you need to prepare less and less, right? So the first conversation that you've never had before, maybe your child likes Stranger Things, or depending on the age of the child, whatever, you go and watch first and go, oh, this point I'm going to ask this question. Right? Then you prepare already, then when the thing comes in, then after the show, like, hey, remember that happened now? What do you think about it? What do you think of this relationship? What do you think the guy did that or the girl did that, whatever, right?
So you can provoking questions and process with them.
Yeah, and I'm realizing that in a lot of different areas of work, the more natural you are, it means that the more you prepare in advance, right? So the more, you want to be natural with your kid. So you prepare in advance first, so you think through already, then you just go, hey, by the way, very naturally, rather than, wow, damn awkward, damn gawe, right? Like,
and then the moment has passed.
Boy, I want to ask you, that one, then the boy is like running away already, right?
So you mentioned about consent. Can you share just a bit about how you teach consent in teachable moments?
Like if I always
what
say,
even is the definition of consent?
Is asking somebody whether they are comfortable with, whether they agree to usually being touched. Touch is the biggest thing because our body is our own, right? It is an inviolable, it should not be violated, right? The space. So, and I always find that if you have more than one child, that's the easiest, because siblings can do all sorts of crazy things like tickling, punching, whatever. Then you'll be like, hey, wait. Do you see that your brother is squirming? That means he's not comfortable already, right? You don't need to wait for him to shout no before you stop, right? You see them squirming, you get, hey, are you okay? Do you want to carry on playing like this? If not, you back off, right? So from a very young age, you can start conversations like that, or like when they go to childcare centers and everything, you'll be like, okay, you're too young to shower yourself, your teacher will be showering you, and then, but if you're not comfortable, you can tell your teacher, stop, I don't want you to shower me anymore, or I can wait until go home, my mommy or daddy will shower me, whatever, right? All these conversations, it teaches them that to recognize when they're uncomfortable and to give them the authority, the empowerment to say, no, I don't like, this is what's happening, I want an alternative, I want my mom or my dad, I want somebody else, right? And this is also true, unfortunately, it's become even more important in even like doctors' clinics, like some of the news lately, right? Yeah. So to say, can you please not examine me until my mom or dad is in the room, like my mom is answering a call, she'll be back in 2 minutes, I can wait outside in the waiting room. Things like that.
And I think that's very, very powerful, because it is a message that I was never taught when I was a child. But I can imagine if a child, whether 2, 3, 4, they are taught to never allow someone to touch your body, even if it's an uncle or auntie who wants to hug you. If you don't want, you have the right to say no. You don't have to, out of respect, then just let them hug. And that becomes very powerful later on in life, because the muscle of consent or recognizing when I'm uncomfortable has already been developed. So then their assertion is not, no, please, but it's like, no, I don't like it. So the firmness comes through years of having a solid muscle, and that comes through the opportunity. So I love how practical it is, even non-sexual, right? Just playing. I said, no, I don't like it. Stop pinching my cheek. And things like that. So wonderful.
I mean, just to build on that, like for my kids also, when they were much younger, we'll often share with them, especially my girl, when we hug her or kiss her on the cheek, we say, only daddy, mommy can do this. If anyone else does this to you, please let daddy, mommy know. And you must tell them no. So we teach them the boundaries.
And that's what I do also when I go to my, like just last night I went to my son and he was playing in the middle of something. I went near to him, can I kiss you? And kiss comes from a very good space, right? And he was so cute, I was all ready to kiss him, No, with a frown. Then I'm like, oh, and then, and then I withdraw, right? I'm like, okay, I want to, but I'm going to give you the experience of what it means to be honored. Because when I said no, and mommy will say no. Mommy will just back off, because it doesn't matter your age, your voice matters. I think the greatest thing that we want our children to know is your voice matters. And so don't hold back. Yeah.
So like just to follow on what you asked Kevin earlier, I think parenting has to be both intentional as well as seize the teachable moments. So intentional will be what
Dream.
Julian talks about the fact that we need to prepare. I think like especially when you know that your child is going to preschool and all that, that's where we need to prepare them. This part of your body cannot be touched by people, so that they know. And then when and like what you say, if someone very touch you, please come back and tell us. So that you also establish the communication, so that not so much that just say no, but
The feedback
you
to
must
the
feedback to
parents.
us. Yeah. So that there is that communication. I think that part is also just as important.
Wonderful. And talking about vocabulary, I want to ask you, do you think there is a difference between father and mother roles? You know, like, you know, sometimes like when the son let the husband handle, then the father will think mothers handle the girls. Yeah, come. Yeah.
I think the answer is both yes and no. Easy to say the yes part because I think it's easier for me to talk to my son about erection, masturbation. It's hard for me to talk to my daughter about menses. How do you feel when your menses come?
Or first crush or
Yeah. So it'd be easier. I mean, on that aspect of it.
in identification lah,
certain
because of
issues.
your body parts. Yeah.
But having said that, I think father must still get involved in your daughter's life. Like I need to model for my daughter what is an appropriate hug, what is an appropriate touch from a man, so that she knows. And like what you say, this is for father to hug you this way can, but not any other man. Yeah, or for father to kiss you this way can, but not any other man. So this is where the father and daughter has to establish that, and the father owe it to the daughter to teach that. And similarly for the mother with the son too, see, there'll be other topics that mother can help the son to appreciate.
Wonderful. I love that cross, right? While we are comfortable with some, I think the truth is it's about the social connection across the different genders. So wonderful.
But I think it's also important to show that dads also understand about menstruation and all that, right? Because when they have a partner, they want their partner to also understand all this, right? So it's not that, oh, this is taboo area, cannot. It's like, no, asking their boyfriend or spouses next time is like, hey, can you go buy pad for me? You cannot lah. How can I buy pad, right? So you don't want them to have this impression that this, like, it's okay for the boy to say this is a no-go area. So I think it's more fluid, like you said, it's yes or no, and it's a much more fluid because we also don't want our children to have very fixed ideas.
Yes.
It's like men versus women,
which is already one size fit all, right? It's much more fluid. It's like, oh, in this case, it's because this particular father is comfortable, this particular mother is comfortable, rather than
this child is ready or more mature or asking.
That's right. Yeah.
So I buy
Pets.
two pets for them.
Wonderful.
So my daughter was shocked once. Hey, you're buying this? I said, yeah. Why? What's wrong? So yeah.
Yes.
Or even as a young couple, I remember like buying bra and all. My husband won't know, and then it's like, so when the more I think we engage, right, both and model that for the children, it becomes more normal. If we normalize it, so it's no longer so 搞味.
I was just on that. I mean, we can even have a panel discussion. Yeah, both dad and mom having the discussion together with the kid. That's fine.
Yes. At dinner table or something. Yeah. Okay, so now it's application. So real life scenarios. So these are real life scenarios that we've drawn up. So viewers, okay, so Galvin, for yours, in childcare, my son touches his penis and is masturbating before his nap time. How would you advise the parent to respond? So the parent gets this feedback from the childcare teacher. Do you know your son always touches his penis before sleeping? What do you want me to do?
Ask the teacher, what do you want me to do?
Ask the teacher back. The teacher will be like,
I think the very first thing that we need to remember is to keep calm and parent on. Yeah, because sometimes when we hear these things, or even when we catch our children doing certain things, the first thing that we do is we freak out. And what happens here is in terms of brain states, right? When parents freak out, children's brain will also freak out.
yes.
Right, so what we want to do is to remain the calm, and in this sense, I think it's more of find an opportune time to approach the subject. Do you play with your private part, and by then, if you have already communicated its penis, then you talk about it. What is it used for? Why is it that you found it? Is it very nice? And talk about it lah. I think the first thing is always to explore together the reasons behind his actions. And once you understand already, then at least you know whatever you're going to say next will be helpful. If not, you just say, don't do that. No good. Then the thing is, that will only fuel it to happen more often probably.
And to really normalize it, I think the
Correct.
truth is, especially for boys, they are getting to know their entire body. So while we are comfortable with saying like, this is my elbow, this is my eye, you know, and my eye can open, close, and we go around both. I mean, just last night the girls were saying, I can wing, you know, my right eye and my left eye, and they were boasting about it, and we let it be. But when, hey, my penis, it's feeling different or sensitive, you know, we tend to clamp down on those conversations, and then it never gets expressed out, right? Which is never healthy.
Yeah.
So then would you allow, I mean, after having the conversation with your son, let's say your young boy says, because it's nice.
Then ask question. I mean, in fact, I've already asked some of these questions. I say, you know, because if you ever find that your penis starts to feel hard lah, if you don't touch it and things like that, right? You want to share with Papa, then Papa has things to share with you too.
And does he share with you?
Then he nods his head. He says, actually today, before I came out, I shared with him what I'm going to be sharing about. So I just asked him again, you know, if next time anything got to do with this body part and things like that, would you be willing? And he readily said, yeah, of course.
And how old is your son now?
He's 8 this year.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so turning 9.
It's wonderful to have, you know, in just talking to you, I can imagine if I'm your child talking to you, there's so much calmness about you and you're not evading anything. So I may not be there now, but the next time it comes, I think I will come to you.
It comes with, like as I mentioned, it comes with planning.
And training and role playing and a lot of preparation.
Rehearsal. Just you want to imagine that these things will happen one day. You don't want to suddenly happen, you know. Yeah, so we want to plan ahead. We want to, when we plan ahead, we can remain calm.
I just want to add this point about, you know, forbidden fruit is always very tempting.
Yeah.
So the more we tell the child cannot do, you're just motivating him to do it.
Yeah,
outside
adding
your-
fuel
I mean,
when
even-
you are not looking. Yes.
Even in positive parenting, we talk about when you list down certain rules, right? You must always say do this, do that.
Yes.
You don't say don't do this, don't do that. They only hear the don't do, then you do it.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Give the clear instruction.
Yes.
Yeah.
Either that or they will do, but they feel so guilty that
They won't come back to you. They won't tell you.
It's actually a very negative psychological space, right? Because one part is like, I want to do what, the other part says cannot, then I do, but I feel guilty. Then the conflict, the internal conflict sets up within a child, right? It is actually really draining and tiring, and you actually, in that state, right, the child is actually more likely to make really bad decisions because they're so busy being tied up in knots already. They're like, cannot even hear themselves speak. It's like, okay lah, just do lah, you know?
And after regret, and then don't tell daddy and mommy.
Yeah.
So that's why the emphasis on do what rather than don't do.
Yeah.
Don't focus on the don't, focus on the do.
I remember I was training my dog. I mean,
Your dog.
no, my dog. No. I know it's not a very good analogy, but transferable. Okay. And it was very humbling because we were saying no, don't do this, and then the dog trainer asked us, then you must tell the dog what to do. You don't just say no, not this, but then what? So I think likewise for a child, right? So often we're saying don't run, don't, but instead walk, walk slowly and
Slow
give
down.
them the reason why as well, not just commands, because I think very quickly we give commands, expect them to be carried out. But if we give them the reasoning, I think we train them to understand the reason why. So in my family, as long as you understand the reason why, there may be many routes to the same reason, right? Walking may be one, holding hands may be another. So then the same objective and outcome is reached through different ways. Yeah, a lot more versatile.
And then during transition period, if you cannot remember to say walk, it's like, don't run, walk.
Yes,
And I've said that many times, don't run, walk.
and I love that because that is parenting, right? We forget and we are transitioning. Then
Yes.
never mind, just don't. Walk, and I think that's so candid and real, right?
That's something I always tell parents, right? You don't beat yourself up having said those things, but the more aware you're about it, the more you're able to catch it.
Yes, and then help each other, right? Sometimes catch for your spouse, sometimes remind the children to remind us. Okay, so your real life scenario. My daughter goes to an all-girls school and comes back telling me she's attracted to another female. How would you respond?
I think the same would be like, oh, tell me more about it. What do you like about her? What is it that you like? Just have a conversation and sort of have the back of your head that it may mean something, it may not mean something. Don't jump to conclusions, but at the same time, don't keep saying, you're still young, I don't know, because because young people find that very offensive. Right? So it's just to, okay, that's nice. You want to ask her to come home next time? I'd like to meet her too, since you like her so much. Just treat it as very normal, right? I think for parents, as we just talked about, the more normal you make it, the more the child feels like I can decide either way. I don't need to be forced into one decision, right? And it also doesn't come with all that shame and guilt and whatever other stuff, right? So just understand more, and then to take the opportunity to go, you like this characteristic. Why is this characteristic important to you? Oh, she's very kind. Why is being kind important to you? What does being kind look like to you? What actions did she take? So you're also trying to crystallize, like kind is a very big word. What does your child understand by the word kind? Or what actions has been taken? Oh, so to you, this means kind. What other actions? You broaden the conversation instead of fixating on, oh my God, right? Then you develop a much better bond and understanding with your child while leaving them free to decide one way or the other. Yeah, and just don't say like, you're still young, you're still option, you can meet many people. Like, no, the child hears that and feels really like invalidated, yeah.
And also the feeling of like is such a range.
Yes.
Right? And sometimes we jump into conclusion too early. Oh no, you're having a crush, or you're having this and that. The truth is that we all grew up admiring people of same gender. I mean, I come from boys' school. There are guys that we are attracted to because of their leadership, because of their achievement, because of things like that. It's more that they inspire us. So sometimes I think parents need to become at all stages and recognize that liking or being drawn to a certain person, whether it's the same gender or opposite gender, the feeling is a whole spectrum. I think we need to just process what you're attracted to the person, and what do you have in mind, and just process with the child.
I so love what you and Ju are saying, because I think often when we use the word like, I have my interpretation of what like equals to. It means in my mind, I project, lesbian already. But for you, like what you say, it could be a person that they're inspired by certain qualities that I would love them to have.
Yes.
So, but often, right, I think what hijacks the entire conversation is our projection on what we think a certain word already means, because that's what it means for us. And we assume it to mean the same for them. And that's, I think, is one of the greatest mistakes that parents can make.
Not just parents, also with their peers. Sometimes their peers, when they share with their peers, the peers say, you,
and then judgment, labels.
And so that's where the family must become the place where you feel safe to process those feelings.
And I really like what you said about never dismiss it. Don't worry now you feel like that, don't worry, it will pass. Because then they're like, and often we're so quick, when we can't deal with something, we tend to push it aside. And unknowingly, when we push it aside, we invalidate. We make them feel like it's not important, when actually it's our own inability to process that conversation, to have that conversation.
And actually, with time, that's how they learn. Our children learn, right? I mean, at a young age, they'll keep coming to daddy, mommy to ask about things, to tell them things. And they learn that everything gets dismissed.
And no need to come.
Yeah,
wonderful. Or even
we always say, right, when they are young, we are all right. Then when they become teenagers, they will all at us.
Correct. Or if you are always a no parent, right? This one no. Yeah. In the end, no need to ask, because it will be no. And then we actually unconsciously train them to distance themselves from us.
Yeah, but I just want to pick up the point you said also. So if you're thinking, lesbian, then okay, what does being lesbian mean to me?
Yes.
What does it mean to my relationship with my child, right? If she turns out to be a lesbian, what does it mean? Is her identity more important than my relationship with her? Which one do I prioritize, right? Because at the end of the day, your child is still your child. All these are just labels, right? And your relationship with the child has to be, or I think for most parents it actually is. It's just that they forget. They get so caught up in the oh my godness of it all, right? They forget that their child is the most important thing. Because as we've been saying, if not, the child just goes underground, disappears, you never hear from them again. That's how you become estranged. If you cannot accept me as I am, then I don't want to be with you anymore.
I will find a community that will accept me for who I am.
Yeah.
And I think it's so true, right? Often if we are triggered by something, it's for us to process, why am I triggered? if my daughter is a lesbian or homo for that matter, what does it, is it because it reflects that I'm a lousy parent, so it's more about my ego. It's no more really about the child or the relationship. It's more about the parent, right? Or even past wounds or trauma that I may have that may need healing. So to process inward instead of,
It's also same on the same way. We talk about lesbian and all that. I think, again, it's a whole range. Just because the person is attracted to the same gender doesn't tie that to the person's sexual preference or identity. It's just a feeling phase. I mean, we're dealing with children or teenagers, feelings calm, feeling good. So I think as parents, we just need to be calm and journey with the person, help them to process that feeling. I like what you said, the relationship with the child is important. Don't lose that.
Yes. I'm very encouraged to be in this session because what I'm hearing is a lot of calm processing and to dig even deeper and deeper and deeper, right? So, Seng Lee, your question is, I walk into the room and catch my son watching porn. What would you say?
Where has all my shit? Oh, that's joking. Okay, so since we keep using the word calm, so I just going to use the word calm again. First, be calm. Right? Even if I see my son watching porn, be calm. Then A, so C stands for calm, A stands for allow some reactions. Because you walk in, right? So the child may say, watch you, then straight away close the laptop, or do something, or shout at you, why you come in? Allow all these things to happen. So C is calm, A is to allow whatever manifestation they may transact, because you have walked into a private zone.
Without knowing.
So naturally, there'll be certain reactions. Be calm and allow all this. Then the L come in. L talks about listening and learning. So as parents, I would encourage that. Put on the learning cap. Find out more. Son, what are you doing? Or what can you learn from this? Then the child may say, I learned to lock my door. and that's fine. That's fine, because you just wanted them to normalize the feeling. Okay, you can only go to L when A is achieved, when the emotions have come down, everybody have come down, including yourself. Because if you're not calm, maybe better for you to go outside, come down first, and come back in.
Open the door the second time.
Maybe not.
All right, so C, A, and then L is where you ask, what can you learn from, or what are you trying to learn by watching? And then the M really stands for the role of a mentor. I think parents mustn't forget that we also are a mentor to our child. When we talk about mentoring, I'm really talking about mentoring with your ear, EAR. E actually stands for explain to your child why porn is attractive. Right? Porn is attractive because deep down inside, all of us want to experience intimacy. And a lot of, and why porn is so addictive is because people feel part of that intimacy. It's just like why some of us like to watch romantic movies. Because it also allows us to be in that romantic feeling for a while.
It's like it gets us in touch with that romantic feeling that we may not show in daily life.
Yes. So it is a form. So you need to explain. I think that's why parenting role must come in. You must explain to our child why porn is attractive, so that they learn in a very wholesome environment, not judgmental, but wholesome. Then A is where you can ask, what can you learn from this? And then finally, R is refer them for healthy website, where they can understand their body parts, where they can understand the healthy progression of relationship. You can also help them to understand that the dangers of porn. It's one thing to understand that porn meets some of the psychological need, but porn also gives us an unhealthy, it's actually an unhealthy way of meeting our need for intimacy. Why unhealthy? Because when you watch porn, right, it desensitizes you. Right, it desensitizes you. You need more aggressive porn to hit the same level of effect on you. So it down your feelings. So you need to explain that slippery slope where porn will bring you to. So it down your senses. It causes you to need more. And then the last thing is it objectifies the opposite gender, which is bad. Right? So that's where So that's where parents must, of course, that assume you learn, that assume you understand the dynamic about porn and all that. And I think if you want to be intentional parenting, you owe it to yourself and your children to get yourself equipped.
Wonderful.
And I think to add on to that as well, right? Young people already tend to feel like we are dinosaurs, right? It's like you all don't know anything, you're older already. So I think to have this conversation, the parent should also find out a little bit about what porn is. You cannot just do a blanket, it's dangerous or it's bad. You need to be a little bit more specific, engage in more conversation. And as with anything online, right, all these online dangers, if parents react out of fear, like, oh, it's bad, it's on, the child is going to dismiss you and say, you're a dinosaur, like, I'm a digital native, right? But it's more like the nuances, what does it mean? What aspect do you need to be careful of? This aspect, okay, maybe a bit more benign, but this particular aspect is, you need to watch out for it and things like that. And I mean, Singly brought up a few good points, like, because, you know, you need more of it, you know, all this very specific, like, you can't be desensitized and you need more to get a response, or you think consent is less important, or you view women as being, you know, more objectified and all that, right? So it's, I think these are very much more useful conversations, because I think parents just tend to go, oh, it's bad, don't do it. But what aspect, what, you know, like, and also finding out what do you get from watching porn. Sometimes they're just curious, I just want to know what sex is. And it's like, oh, actually, anything you watch on TV is not real sex. It's sensationalized in some way or other, you know, and so they can have a deeper conversation lah. Right, yeah, I think that's really important, because what I've been hearing lately is like, this blanket is dangerous, don't go there, doesn't work.
I love what you are saying, because often we come too quickly with our judgments of right, wrong, good, bad, and then we expect the next generation to follow without explaining to them, without taking the time to process why and how. Like you shared about why it's not good, but how do we share what are values that we can learn? What was sex created for? What's the intention? How do you honor, respect? These are topics that we can teach them in sharing.
Yeah, that's right.
And together with porn, I want to ask Galvin, right? Because you shared that you chance upon your 8-year-old son watching porn. And this is...
not exactly porn per se.
Okay, but do you want to share a bit more on how you...
So what happened was, there was one, I mean, we give our boy some screen time. And usually he would, you know, every half an hour or so, he would be doing other things, but as in, you know, take a break. But that particular morning, he was like, especially quiet, you know. So after some time has passed, I realized that something must be, you know. So I just went in. He was supposed to be playing a game, but obviously it wasn't a game. So he was reading something. So when I entered the room, and then I saw him, you know, basically what I did was I walked up to him and said, why is so quiet? And look at what he said. It was basically a search, Google search. I said, I look at that term. Why is that term doing there? So it was a bit taken aback.
What was the term or the word?
Oh, that one I told him.
No, okay. Don't.
Yeah, but it wasn't anything that is porn related.
Okay.
But that's usually how it begins.
Yes.
You know. So basically he was previously reading a storybook by Roald Dahl, and it came to a page where there were some interesting happenings lah, and it talked about a particular body part. So he was somehow it intrigued him, so he decided to search, and when he searched, you know when you search for certain things, certain pictures come out and things like that. Yeah, and then just click. But I was, because I have already prepped myself for such a scenario before, so I was totally cool about it. So he was like a bit, I could see that he was a bit, you know, heightened alert, you know. So I just went in. I said, actually it was at the game. So I actually switched back to the search. Then he was, you know. And then when I look at the history one by one, then he was like very quiet about it. So I said, why are you searching about all this? Can you help? Could you help Daddy understand what he's searching for? Then that is really where I got to know that it was the book that he was reading. So when I read the book, then I saw, oh, okay. So then from there I get to understand a little bit more that he genuinely just wanted to know more about it. So there was nothing. And in actual fact, for children his age, right, concrete thinking on, they are literally, you know, I mean, very innocent. Sometimes it's parents who think beyond.
Yes.
Yeah, so use that opportunity to in a sense put certain things in place to help you understand that, yeah, you know, the fact that you came across, you click on this particular term simply because you were curious about another term that is not exactly very serious.
And actually what you say is very true, because statistics have shown from Safeguard, right, that I think probably 70% of porn consumers are kids aged 8 to 16, something like that. And this is the thing, they stumble on it. It's not like they were searching for it. It's like, you know, they were just searching for homework or some, and then the word just pops up, and then they see, and then because it's so foreign to them, they just watch, you know, very innocently.
We came across a case where the boy was doing a project on, you know, in Australia, the aborigines. Search aborigines, and then search for pictures, then other pictures come.
Yes,
Yeah,
just the word
happens like that.
aborigines.
Just I searched the word fox, trying to do some presentation. I just need to have some pictures of foxes, and then Megan Fox came up in her very suggestive pose.
And
my son walked in.
so I think it's so true, right?
Yeah. So you just have to be calm and say.
How do you explain to him?
I just say I'm doing my homework lah. I'm just doing my preparation. I guess okay. To begin with, in my family we talk about such things very openly. Yeah. So they know, and they know what I do. In fact, the other day I was just doing a set of slides on happy hormones. So I was listing dopamine and oxytocin and all that. My son walked in and saw the word dopamine and how to achieve dopamine. He says, masturbate lor.
Wonderful.
I said, hey, son, where do you learn that from? And then that's where we get our conversation again. Yeah.
Wonderful. And another teachable moment that you, wonderful.
But I think it's also not to underestimate that actually, especially for older children, I don't mean 8 to 10, 12, right? But I think it was a research done by Touch. They said that amongst teens, like 13 and up, over half of boys came across porn by actively searching for it. So I think we cannot deny that there's sex everywhere. I mean, this is Orchard Road. You walk down Orchard Road, you will see sex in your face, selling everything. One of the most puzzling is selling hamburgers as well. As like, you know, how is a young child supposed to understand that this sexual connotation, right? But they're using that to sell hamburgers. So I think for children, they're bombarded with it. And I think for parents, we just need to be aware that this is the reality that they live in, and not to sort of neither to over nor under infantilize or react. You know, like because some are actually curious and they actually came upon it on purpose. Then it's again to have a conversation about, okay, you're curious, you know, what is it about, but not to deny, it was accident only, you know. So that's also that's also a form of denial.
And I think the reason why they're curious is if we are not providing or forthcoming with answers, it's no wonder.
I think, I mean, even in our own generation, I believe we were curious too.
Of course.
But the only difference is
no internet.
It's harder to come by. Much harder.
It's called blue tape.
Oh, blue tape or magazines. That was then, right?
Very hard to come by.
Yes, and you have to pay, and then, you know, I don't know where you'll get it, but but true. The accessibility of the internet has really changed.
When I was Sec 1, I was already the president of the sex club in my school.
Oh, really? Got your own? You formed your own? Okay.
No, I'm just saying that boys being boys, or I guess no gender too, but I think when you hit 13, 14, or maybe nowadays younger, you're just curious about the body parts. You're just curious about being aroused. That's a normal growth journey. I think parents just need to be, like I say, calm again, right? And process with your child about why you are attracted to such things, why your body responds to certain sensations and things like that. I think that's where parents need to in a sense, go for sex education. and so that we can have a very holistic conversation with our children who are growing up.
I think
wonderful.
It's also, I think, for a lot of parents out there, it might also be because of the, you know, what we experience as children ourselves, what our parents have told us in the past. So I think this is something that we have to work through. You know, whatever that needs to be undone in terms of the way we see porn, we see all this. We have to know that it's something that we've got to this conversation is going to have with our children.
And I think as we work through it, right, we bring up a different generation of children.
I would think that our children's generation shouldn't have an issue in the future when they speak to their children, because they are in this current landscape already.
I think not all, I mean, to go back to what I said, like a lot of the participants who attend the workshop, Birds and Bees workshop, right, more than half will say that they have very negative messages about sex when young. So a lot of shame-filled messages, right? And it's really heartening that, they're all coming and we're all coming together to say, okay, we want to do better by our children. But then at the same time, I also recognize that not every parent is like that. And I think sometimes it's also a function of having time and privilege, right? If you are just so busy at work and you're so worried about your next meal, you probably don't have these conversations with your children. But maybe also to go back to your point, not having these conversations may actually be better than having very shame-filled, guilt-filled conversations as well, right? So it looks like the next generation are on a better footing because there are a lot more parents talking about it. But at the same time, I think it cannot be assumed, right? We still need to work towards that
Definitely.
that thing.
I echo what you say, because there's another factor that we must not forget, and that is parents themselves might have very traumatic sexual experience. And therefore this will be a no-go zone for them. And that's why I think that's why community must come in when we provide healthy education, holistic healthy education on sex and all that.
Wonderful. And on that point, I mean, it perfectly links. Ju, I want to ask you, because there are some, when we talk about reframing, there are some abused ladies in the work that you do with. How would we reframe it such that the victim doesn't feel it's their fault? Because very often, whether it's molestation or rape, the victim always says, it's my fault. So there's a lot of shame and guilt, and from there, a disconnect, right? So they isolate themselves with, So anything that you want to share with our viewers today? So if a parent were to listen or to sense or to guess, whether it's my child or just someone else, what can we do to empower parents so that the conversations that we bring forth into the world are more empowering?
I think again, it's first to realize that what's available out there. Unfortunately, a lot of the ads and public service messages, right, are targeted at women, like, don't be molested, don't be raped, don't this. And I'm like, my first question, sometimes, after being with that so long, my first question is, how? You tell me how I can keep myself 100% safe, I will do it. Because there's so many instances of women being raped or molested when they've done everything right. You can do everything by the book and you can still kena because you bad luck or whatever, right? So I do wish that our public service messages can be geared more towards, like in UK and US, some of it has been like, don't be that guy. Don't be the guy who molests. Don't be the guy who takes advantage. So you shift the onus onto the perpetrator. Because at the end of the day, honestly speaking, there's so many women who have done everything by the book and done everything right, and they're still gonna rape or gonna molested or gonna whatever, right? So then I think it's time to say, okay, don't do it. Rather than how to keep safe is like, how do you respect people more? And increasingly, women are also doing the assaulting. So for both genders, how do you respect the person in front of you, not to touch, not to violate them without getting a clear consent? You may be horny, you may be whatever, but that's just you. You have other ways of dealing with it, right? Don't inflict something on the other person. So then I think the message, first of all, as parents, you understand that the society messaging is very much on a sort of almost like a victim blaming. It's like, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. So when you talk to our children, it has to be almost doubly like, it's not your fault. It really isn't your fault. Like, I understand that you did your best, but sometimes other people have intentions that you cannot defend against. If they want to molest or rape you, it's very hard to keep your, unless you stay at home, lock the door the whole day, right? But even so, there are visitors to the house, right? The statistics is that 90% of rape survivors know the perpetrator is someone known to them, usually a neighbor, uncle, older siblings, friend, is someone that's known to them and they feel a little bit of comfort or trust already. And that trust was violated. So I think that's a very important message for parents to give children to say, it's not just about keeping yourself safe. Of course, do your end of the bargain. But if anything happens, come to me. I know it's not your fault because there are all these other factors that come into play in an assault, right? Right. Yeah. So it's both giving our child a message that there's certain things that are not so safe to do, but at the same time, even if you've done it, I won't blame you. Please come and talk to me.
But
Yeah.
I think what I'm really hearing is really keeping that channel of communication always open. Like there's nothing too wrong or big that you've ever done that would make me never have your back or never be there for you. And I think that's a message that a lot of our children need to hear over and over and over again. Yeah.
I think coming back to the messaging, I think the part about communicating what to do rather than what not to do. Like do respect one another, do build a culture of honor, things like that, so that we move towards a more positive direction. Just like we tell people, don't use the word don't. It just don't encourage. It doesn't help us
Yeah.
to do what to know what to do.
Yeah.
Tell us what to do. I think it does answer your question about public messaging.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So I think increasingly, right, as you are listening to this, you can be the voice, right? Whether for consent, whether for respect, whether we can teach our boys and our girls how to be that voice, you know, to tell your fellow, your son, to tell a fellow schoolmate, hey, that's not a way to treat a girl. Let's treat them with respect, because the father modeled how to treat the daughter or even a wife with respect. And even for women to learn consent in, do we as parents allow our children to voice up, and do we honor them? So I think I want to bring this up. Galvin actually checked with his son whether it was okay for him to share that. Very often, I think the traditional parenting is, I say I'm going to share means I'm going to share. Why do I need your consent? But in small ways like that now, when we honor our children, is where the entire culture will begin to shift, not just from nuclear families, but increasingly and collectively. So thank you so much. I trust it was a very enjoyable session. We talked about sex, porn, not yet virginity, but I think it was a very in-depth session. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.